What if I gifted you a radio with no battery? Well, in the 1920s, this would have been completely normal. Crystal radios were an acceptable way of listening to music and news on the local radio station. Unlike modern radios, crystal radios didn't need a power source to operate. Matter of fact, they were so easy to make that in World War II, in Japanese and German prisoners of war camps, prisoners often made them from scrap metals, rusted razor blades, and pencil lead, then hide them behind fake walls because they could not be easily detected. Since the radios didn't use any power source, once hidden, they were completely silent to the outside world, and the guards on routine inspection duty could not easily detect or find them. Therefore, the prisoners could keep up to date with news on the outside world, and they could know whether they are on the winning side or the losing side, whether on the good or the bad side of history. The catch, they were ridiculously finicky. A single heavy footstep or a slammed wooden door could knock the microscopic cat's whiskers wire off its sweet spot, killing the broadcast instantly. Much like having to bend an old headphone wire at just the right angle to get very good sound.
So how can a rock and a coil of wire by itself pull sound from the air with no power at all? Let's break down the science of the original battery-free radio. A battery normally supplies electrical energy to a radio's electronics, but a crystal radio doesn't have powered electronics or an amplifier. Instead, the energy is already arriving through the air. That antenna from broadcasting stations converts electrical energy into an electromagnetic wave, which travels outward through space. By the time the wave reaches our crystal set, most of its energy has spread over an enormous area. But the receiving area still intercepts a tiny fraction of it. The changing electromagnetic field that it intercepts from the radio creates a small alternating voltage inside the aerial. And so now without a battery, we actually have a very small electrical signal that we can use inside the receiver. And importantly, that electrical signal contains two things at once: the information, which is the speech or the music or the radio, and a tiny amount of electrical energy carried from the transmitter. So importantly, that crystal set doesn't create energy. It simply works with what little it receives. So now we know how it's powered, but how does it actually convert this received signal into the information sent? First, the aerial picks up many radio signals at once, but because different stations all are broadcasting different electromagnetic waves through the air, inside the crystal set, the tuning kit, made from a coil and a capacitor, acts like a frequency selector. By adjusting the circuit, we change its resonant frequency so that it responds strongly to one station's carrier frequency and much less strongly to the others. So at this stage, we have isolated the station we want, but the signal is still a very high frequency AM waveform. AM dominated early broadcasting, partly because it was so easy to generate, and it could be detected with extremely simple hardware. And our device is the perfect example, because with just a piece of galena and a fine wire, we were able to recover the whole audio. So how do we recover the actual signal that was sent? This is where the galena crystal and cat's whisker comes in. Together they behave like a primitive diode, allowing current to flow more easily in one direction than the other, and this is what rectifies the signal. But the cat's whisker has to touch a tiny sensitive spot on the galena crystal to form a rectifying contact that lets current pass through more easily one way than the other. And because only certain spots work well, getting a clear signal could be fiddly and easily disturbed. Once the alternating waveform has been rectified though, the slower changing envelope of the signal is recovered. And this envelope is essentially the original audio information. So the crystal is performing the key receiver operation of detection and demodulation. It turns the high frequency signal to recovered audio frequency signals. But unlike modern radio, there's no amplification afterwards. And this is why you need headphones. The crystal set captures so little energy that there isn't enough power to drive a normal loudspeaker at a useful volume. That's why sensitive headphones only need to move a tiny diaphragm positioned very close to your ear. And this requires so little energy. So that means the tiny electrical signal passing through the aerial is passed almost directly into the earphones. Inside the earphones, a small changing current produces a changing magnetic force, which moves a lightweight diaphragm back and forth. And this diaphragm pushes on the surrounding air, producing sound waves that your ear can hear. So the crystal set can take an extremely weak radio signal from the air, select the frequency we want, basically selecting a radio station, recover that audio information, and turn it into sound, all without external power source. What made devices like this crystal set important was that they gave ordinary people a simple and cheap way to receive broadcast radio at home. Unlike earlier communication systems such as the telegraph or telephone, which were mainly one-to-one, meaning one sender and one receiver, a crystal set could receive a signal being broadcast from one transmitter to thousands of listeners at once. So this simple receiver helped people access a new form of one-to-many communication. Think music, news, speeches, public information, and that could all arrive directly at home.
Modern wireless receivers are obviously far more advanced than this crystal set. Today, devices like smartphones use signal amplification and sophisticated digital signal processing, all integrated in a small compact semiconductor chip. But fundamentally, they're still doing the same job. Capture the signal and recover the information, then deliver it to the end user. The Galena radio set did this more primitively with the headphones, the coil, and the Galena crystal.
So next time your phone dies, just remember, you can still listen to the radio with a rock, a wire, and no battery.
Capture the signal and the capacitor coil. Is it a capacitor coil? Crystal set does this primitively. In a similar way, the crystal set does this primitively with a coil, capacitor. When you are ready, you can tell me.
What am I doing with this actually?
It's a prop.
I get you.